Hello, I am Dr. Kirsten James Dunn, and I will be guiding you through this course. What you see is our Unit 1 screen. In Unit 1, we will be looking at the traditional British literary canon. And soon, this video will be replaced by the one I'm creating at the very moment. All right, so in the center, we see some main content. To our right, we see a to-do list. We also see a timeline to our right. In the main content screen, back to the middle, we see about the readings and links to the readings, and we see supplemental videos. You must watch all of the supplemental videos. We also see a section about postmodern English, which is a little bit of a joke of mine, a discussion of what standard English is, academic English, different varieties of English that we find our literature in. All right, let's go back up to the beginning of this section. The traditional British literary canon refers to a body of significant works that are widely recognized and studied within British literature. This canon has evolved over time, reflecting the values, history, and cultural changes of the United Kingdom. Key characteristics of the traditional British literary canon include historical breadth, influential authors, diverse genres, cultural significance, educational emphasis, evolution and critique, and literary quality. While the traditional canon has been critiqued for its lack of diversity and representation, a critique I happen to agree with, it remains the cornerstone of British literary studies and has significantly influenced the development of literature worldwide. That said, we will only be spending about 3 weeks on the traditional canon. In fact, each unit lasts about 3 weeks in this course. Our following unit in this course is concerned with disrupting the canon. So we start this unit, this 3 weeks, looking at the traditional canon. Then we're going to talk about the movement to disrupt the canon, to make the canon more inclusive. And we'll be focusing on those writers next. But for the moment, we're looking at the traditional literary canon. So, about the readings, we're going to focus on Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, William Shakespeare's Hamlet, Pride and Prejudice, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, just a taster of that. We will be reading the entirety of the book during this course. It's the only work we read really in its entirety as a book. Um, we'll be writing a term paper about that as well. We'll also be looking at a passage from Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, the preface to A Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, and a part of A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. In terms of supplemental videos, we have a first video, which is an overview of Beowulf, Canterbury Tales, Epic Journeys, and our initial discussion of Frankenstein. Though it's a bit dated, it contains valuable information from the British Library that's no longer available. So I keep that in our course. This next video is about Shakespeare and original pronunciation issues. Then we have a video about John Milton. It's has to do with with Paradise Lost, though it's not required in the course. The watching of this excellent documentary is actually included in a couple of questions on your exam process. So um, even though Paradise Lost isn't included and this focuses on that, read watch the video basically. You do not have to necessarily read very much of Paradise Lost, but you do have to watch the video. Yeah. Okay. Let's continue on with our videos. The Untold Story of Jane Austen. So this video is that gives you a little context of Jane Austen. Then we follow with Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, getting to know her a little bit better through a biography. And we finish up with Oscar Wilde and his picture of Dorian Gray. It was really a little bit about Oscar himself. And I remind everyone to follow that link to go read the preface, since the content of that question that does actually show up a bit in our discussion of him and his work later on when we look at our comprehensive concluding essay. Right. Speaking of all that, let's quickly look at our to-do list for a moment. Interrupt going down the main structure of the page to look at our to-do list. You have to complete this unit's readings. You have to watch the video supplementals. You have to complete the navigation exam, open the start of term and closing the 21st of January. Complete this unit's exam, open the start of term and closing the 4th of February. So these are two different ones. Let's look at coursework under our assignments section. Course navigation exam due by the 21st of January. Um, these dates might change a bit in future, but not for our course. For our course, the dates that you see in assignments are the dates you should list. And then we've got the Unit 1 exam for our first unit. All right, let's go back to our main unit. Okay, so we have those, and then the syllabus for this course outlines the requirements and expectations for the course, and it's critically important that you read through it. Again, let me remind everyone that you can find to the far left in the navigational panel the syllabus. You can also find the unit, like the unit that we're in right now, instructions for the term paper that is due by the end of the term. You can find additional information about me and your classmates all available. So this is our transitional panel. Um, we have a sharing board over at Padlet. It is not required, but for students that want to make this asynchronous online course a bit more interactive, you can go visit that sharing board, which looks a bit like this. And you'll notice it says this is the place to contribute ideas and links to things related to our course. Participation is optional. Uh, Students in the past have occasionally also added things that they're simply interested in that relate to British literature. And even though we don't require Emma Smith's author of Maiden's Trip, it was an interesting thing that was added one year. We have a little things like Zadie Smith reading from On Beauty, we have Shakespeare reduced. So I would say browse through this. You might find something interesting there. You might want to add something. Unless you have an account at Padlet, it's important that you add yourself to Padlet because well, I mean that you rather state your name. Otherwise, it will come out as anonymous. You'll note Jackie doesn't have a Padlet account, so she added her name there, so I would know who had contributed, so we would all know. Um, Otherwise, it just comes out as anonymous. Um, all right. So let's get back to Unit 1. There's a timeline. Now, in the timeline, it tells us the era of some of the works that we look into. Beowulf, for example, is the foundational epic poem of English literature. It's the original epic story narrative that we start with. Um, we then look at Arthurian legends a little bit in the history. When you consider the history of English literature, Arthurian legends tend to be the next thing, even though there is this little bit of a debate and argument about whether we truly count these in as British literature, since Beowulf is in the time of Scandinavian culture. Arthurian legends are highly contributed to by French troubadour traditions. Uh, to a certain extent, when we're looking at this time period, the early time period in European culture, there is a significant blending of cultures in the literature that we looked at. All right. Uh, Geoffrey Chaucer, we then go into in the Renaissance, we have William Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe, 17th century John Milton, 18th century Alexander Pope and Jonathan Swift are noted. In the Romantic period, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Austen, Shelley, Victorian era, Dickens, Bronte, Emily Bronte, and Charlotte are listed notably out of the Bronte sisters. Thomas Hardy, Oscar Wilde, George Bernard Shaw in the 20th century, along with Virginia Woolf, E.H. Lawrence, T.S. Eliot, Agatha Christie, Tolkien, Huxley, Orwell, and Ian Fleming. The timeline, we have Old English, Middle English, early modern English, late modern English, and early modern, or rather, and just modern English. we tend to call it. Now, why is this confusing? Let's move over to our postmodern discussion of English. I would argue that we're in a postmodern state of English culture and language. But well, to start us off, there'll be a little discussion that you'll need to watch of Professor David Crystal talking about language and the difference between actively commonly used language and academic prose. Then let's actually look at this. So in Old English, that's the Beowulf period that we're talking about. We have uh, Common Era 450 to about 1100. Then Middle English, we come into the medieval period. Early Modern English 1500 to 1700. Late Modern English 1700 to early 20th century. And Modern English contemporary. So technically, everything after the medieval period is modern period English, but in order to observe the significant changes in language and use between the Elizabethans and the time of industrialization, historians of English language and language use tend to divide the modern into early and late, and then just plain modern English or contemporary English, which always sounds a bit illogical. I mean, surely it should be early, middle, and late modern English instead. Honestly, I love reading works from the early, late 20th century. The style of writing has changed considerably, though, when you read those prose. Arguably, we need new words to define the development of English language and culture. I think postmodern English would not be a terrible choice for us to make. And again, go to that early, middle, and late modern, and then postmodern English. That is just my own suggestion. All right, so then let's clarify again that when we're talking about Old English, Beowulf, for example, is an example of Old English. Middle English, Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. Um, then when we go into early modern English, William Shakespeare's plays and sonnets and the King James Bible. Late modern English, Austen, Dickens, the Romantic poets, Wordsworth and Byron. And then in what they call modern or contemporary English, George Orwell, J.R.R. Tolkien, etc. All right. And that is the introduction for Unit 1. Please remember to feel free to contact me with any questions you have as you go through this semi-self-paced and independent study of the subject of British literature. Again, you can find information about me directly by going to the instructor page, Meet Your Instructor. Here's my email address. My office hours for spring 2024 are 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., Wednesdays and Thursdays. If you're watching this during a different term, those hours might be different. This would again be the place to find that information out. There's a link to my online virtual office space. If you are concerned about your readiness, I would advise taking the online readiness self-assessment. If there are issues there, if you find that you're going to need more support, please contact me as soon as possible so that I can put you in contact with some tutorial support to make sure you succeed in the online asynchronous version of this course. Thank you so much, and I look forward to working together.